Hey, how are you doing, girl? It's Miguel Trujillo, your dad. It's the 29th of May, 2019, and I just want to say hello. How are you doing, girl? So it's been a while since I've made one of these videos. I would guess that it's been about 5 days, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm still here. I had a fantastic time in New Mexico. I was so glad to see my family again. It had been a long time. It had been about a year since I'd seen them, and I am real pleased that I had a chance to just go. And I had a really fun time just experiencing the whole trip. I was essentially in awe about everything. Traveling is just such an amazing experience. It's just phenomenal. There's really nothing that can describe it. It's you are just I was just blown away by all the things that I saw, all the things that I discovered. It was an amazing trip. Um, I think one thing that blows me away, one of the first things that blow me away is the fact that we can fly at all in airplanes. These giant metal containers shooting through the sky, these robots, these computers that enable us to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast in just a few hours are amazing. What an incredible invention they are. I mean, I got from LAX to Albuquerque Airport, the Sunport, in like an hour and 40 minutes, which is phenomenal. It may have even been faster than that. It, it really was incredible. I mean, there's so much to love about airplanes. And I can really see why the pilots are so enthusiastic and feel so amazing about flying in the air because it is such an unusual vantage point. When you're looking down from the sky, I mean, down to the earth, looking at clouds from above, it really is something spectacular. And I'm amazed that we can do it routinely and as safely as we can in our society. I mean, it really is surprising that there are people who work every day on board airplanes. I mean, that is just what they do. That is their profession. And they do that job through their entire career and they retire through that career. I mean, the level of safety that they've got going in that industry is remarkable. And I'm just so pleased to have it around when I'm around, you know? It's not some futuristic thing, although it appears futuristic on many levels. It's the present. There's one image that is sort of fixated in my mind. It was when I was at LAX picking up my car in the economy parking lot E, the city parking lot, and I looked up from where my car was, and I just saw out in the distance these airplanes that were getting ready to land at LAX airport, and they were just. It was twilight. It was 8 o'clock p.m. and they all had their lights on, right? Of course, I guess naturally they do all the time, but I saw them like a string of lights from where I was to way out into the distance in the horizon. And I saw like a string of 6 or 7 lights hovering in air. These airplanes just approaching LAX airport in line, in order to land one by one. And it was just it's a remarkable thing to see these lights in the distance, at high elevation, or I guess at relatively low elevation, approaching LAX airport. And it's just struck me as just being such a remarkable feat of technology. And then, of course, these airplanes are huge, right? When they fly overhead, they're overhead because of the rumble of their engines and the noise that they make, the noise that their jet engines make. It really is phenomenal. It is definitely a sight to see. You get to try to make out their landing gear and their tires, and I don't know. It's just there's something phenomenal about it, and it's interesting to see the windows on the side of the airplane, how they're so small compared to the bulk of the airplane, and that people are looking out those windows. I can see the windows that the people who are flying the plane look through, and it's just phenomenal. Really, just quite phenomenal to imagine all the electrical systems, hydraulic systems, all the aluminum structure and all the plastic that goes into that. It's phenomenal. I mean, I'm really just blown away by airplanes and by airports. I mean, it's kind of funny. These places are crazy, but they are also interesting places to do people watching. These are places where people congregate, and I have experiences all the time when I'm at airports. People asking for directions, people asking for assistance, and I get to interact with them and talk with them and just be around them. Everyone's generally doing the best they can in terms of their behavior, and kids are crying, little babies are upset, and I don't know, I just really like it. And then I remember one other part about being at LAX was just I was leaving the airport, and I was interested in getting to my parked car, and so I had to go out from the baggage claim area and catch a bus to the parking lot. And the noise of all the vehicles, I mean, the cacophony, right? The horn blowing and the engines of the trucks and the vans, just and the diesel smoke, the exhaust. I mean, it felt chaotic, particularly with all the sounds and all the people rushing around. I could see the uncertain faces on everybody's face. And it's just this cacophony, this complexity, this chaos happening before me. It just the chaos itself was a sight to behold. Just the chaos. It was like, wow, this is what chaos is. Controlled chaos. Well, yeah, it's relatively controlled chaos. And it's kind of interesting. There's certain moods, that there is sort of social atmospheres, social moods. And it was interesting to sort of contrast social mood, say, being on the airplane, and comparing being on the airplane, comparing being at baggage claim, comparing being at ground transportation, pickup points, drop off points. Just the various moods, the moods in the bus, the moods in the bus, the people's moods in the bus for ground transportation were a lot different than the people's moods in the airplane. These were the same people, but there's like a different mood, different perception. People more relaxed on the bus, and they have got more variation in their behavior on the bus. But on the plane, everybody's monotone personality. Everybody's just they know what's going on. They just don't want to make a ruckus. They don't want to cause undue stress to their fellow passengers, or to the pilot, or to the flight attendants. And I'm grateful for that. The last thing, when so many people are packed in a small space for a long time, I had on my way back from Albuquerque, there were two legs of my trip. One leg was from Albuquerque Sunport to Denver, Colorado, and the second leg was from Denver to LAX. No, those were my flight legs. I also had to drive for 3 hours from LAX to home, to Lompoc. And anyway, I had a good time. I'll talk more about seeing my family again, because that's probably what you might be more interested in, Emily. So yeah, I visited my mom, who's your grandma, my dad, who's your grandpa, and I visited my brothers, who are your uncles and aunt, my sister, and then I visited with cousins of mine, cousins of yours, and it's really nice to see them. I had such a good time. Our personalities meshed pretty well, and really, I didn't have any. Um, what's kind of nice in our family, there just isn't any, at least for me, there isn't any strain in relationships. You know, things are rather easy. Um, at least for me, and it probably is the result of me being a guest among my family. If I probably hung around them more often, like day after day, hour after hour, then I'm sure people would get on each other's nerves. But I did get this very deep, deep sense that I was a valued character in everyone's story uh, during my time in New Mexico. That my presence was appreciated and recognized and respected and just valued. And I don't know, that's great. It's great to have that. And like I mentioned, it might be partly because I don't go very often. Once a year I go see my family in New Mexico. But it was a good time. We had a blast. I mean, I had so much fun. We had lots of potlucks and picnics, and we ate out at nice restaurants, and I got to see family and visit with people who I haven't seen in a long time. I visited with my cousin, Lydia Trujillo. I haven't seen her for like 20 years. My cousin. I know. And it was so nice to visit with her again and speak with her, to recognize the common experiences we have, and to share some of the losses, the mutual losses. Lydia had recently lost her father in death, who was, I guess, my uncle. And, it was great, essentially just mourning and respecting that loss that we both had. That was something we had in common. And it was something that, was important to both of us, recognizing that loss and honoring that loss. And I don't know, I was just really happy to have that experience. It was an experience I didn't necessarily plan on, that heartfelt, heart-centered experience with my cousin. So it was nice. Actually, I guess she was my aunt. So, and it was really nice catching up with those family members that I hadn't seen for a while. And I got to see my college buddy, Miles, and that was nice. We also hadn't seen each other for like 18 years. It was really nice to spend some time with him and get to know him and get to know his family. One interesting fact about going to eat out at restaurants a lot is that there's some restaurants that are just loud. They're just loud. And, this issue of loudness at restaurants has not really been fixed. A lot of restaurants are loud. When a lot of people congregate in a place like a restaurant with walls and ceilings and floors which allow for sound reflection, the noise level can get pretty high. And what happened was I found myself sort of trying to talk above the cacophony, right? To talk above the noise in the room. And when I did that, my voice muscles, my voice box or whatever it was, those muscles got tired or dry or whatever happens to them. And it becomes my vocal cords, I guess, got fatigued and I got tired. They were uncomfortable for a couple days while they adapted to the levels that I was speaking, the higher volume levels that I was speaking. Anyway, that was somewhat unpleasant, and I didn't really care for that. I had to cut some speaking uh, short, some conversation short, or at least converse in ways that were not as loud for a time. I don't like doing that really. Um, I wish I could speak at full volume all the time. For me, there's an important part of my personality is the expression of voice volume. I think it's an indicator, it's a signal of strength and confidence. And when I have to tone down my voice, it almost seems a little bit inauthentic. I just have to preserve my my ability to speak, really. That's what it's all about. I speak a little more lightly so that I can continue to speak because believe it or not, it's actually quite painful to speak with a tired voice box. So I had a really good time nonetheless. And I loved eating in those novel restaurants. I got to eat a whole lot of new foods, very original foods, some stuff I've never eaten before, some flavors I had never tasted before. It's so interesting. I love New Mexican food. It is so good. There's so many creative, talented cooks and chefs out there. Yeah, it's nice to get a sampling of their wares. And what was also nice is I kind of reaffirmed my love for apples. I had a lot of apples on this trip, a lot more apples than I usually have. And I think I had a lot more bananas and carrots than I usually have on trips like this. Lately, I've been interested in apples, bananas, and carrots and eating them regularly, and it's a big part of my life. What can I say? It's important to me. I also had some indiscretions related to the food I was eating. It wasn't consistent with my food plan necessarily. I tell you, when I travel, I'm not meeting my food, my nutrition goals. That's for sure. And it's reasonable. It's hard to meet your caloric intake and nutrition goals when you're on travel. It's just tough. At least I end up overeating a lot, and I end up eating foods I don't necessarily want to eat. It's just so complicated. For example, um, I was hankering for a hamburger. And of course, you'll only eat vegan hamburgers, or at least I try to eat vegan hamburgers, right? So I went to Carl's Jr. to get their Impossible Burger, which is a vegan burger. And of course, I asked for it without cheese. And then the attendant behind the cash register asked, "Would you like to not have mayo either?" I wasn't even thinking mayo. And I said, "Yes, please, no mayo." And I thanked her for giving me that option. So it's now it just reminded me that when I get a veggie burger, not only do I have to ask for no cheese, but I also have to ask for um, no like egg based or dairy based sauces. And it's let me tell you, it's a little bit complicated. I got to remember these things. I've got these rules that I want to try to live by, and it's important to me, and I'm glad I'm able to do it. And so I did. I asked for no cheese, no mayo. But it's an example of how complex eating on the go, eating while travel is when you're trying to meet standards. And And there was other ways that I was busting my standards with that burger. I wasn't too clear on exactly how many calories I was eating. Now, it's true that right there on the menu at Carl's Jr., they tell you the number of calories in an Impossible Burger. Yeah, but they don't tell you how many calories there are in a burger without cheese and without mayo. And of course, I wasn't writing it all down. I didn't have an accounting of all the food that I ate all that day. And I guess I could have theoretically done it, but no, there's no way I could have done it. Because I also ate at the Frontier, right? I had a pancake, some potatoes, some potato hash browns, and a coffee, and something else. But I was not able to measure the number of calories I was eating yesterday. So I don't know. I guess it's nice to have a break every once in a while. And 5 or 6 days of uncontrolled eating is not the worst thing in the world. There are problems with it necessarily, as not being able to control calories or control my vegan choices as much. But there are benefits. For example, I get to eat a wider variety of food. I get to eat foods that I may not have eaten before. I get to eat foods in the quantity that I want to eat them. So in a way, it is good insight into my sort of eating habits that are uncontrolled. What are they like? I think what I've found out so far is that they very easily get out of control. I'm not sure that it would be a good idea for me to continue eating this way for any more than a week. In fact, I'm certain it wouldn't be very good. I'm so pleased to be back at home. And one of the reasons I'm pleased to be back at home is that I can get my diet back under control. And then exercise. There's diet and exercise, right? That equation that we all rely on to live our best lives and help us sort of be as strong as we can in our body. I did not go to the gym the entire time I was on vacation in New Mexico. I loved being on travel, but I just was not able to get the exercise in that I normally get in. I didn't do any weightlifting. I did very minimal swimming. I did very minimal running. I did very minimal walking compared to the kind of walking I usually do. So I really am happy to be back home so I can get back into the swing of things and hit the gym hard. And I also am bracing for the fact that my first few exercise attempts back, I might have some pretty sore muscles as I start up again. My poor muscles haven't been worked out in the gym for like 6-7 days. And so it's going to be kind of a shock when I go back into my to my old workout routine. So I'm super stoked to go to the gym today, somehow do something to get this body back on track again. Maybe I think what I'll do today is I'll do chest today. That might be good. Or running. Running might be exactly what I need to do. Get some of these calories burnt, So I'm also glad to be back to all my technology. I left my iPad Pro at home. So I get to pick that up and start planning. Oh my gosh, and it looks like my plants are pretty much dead. I wasn't able to water them for a week, and they were fairly young, and looks like they may be goners. Golly. Hopefully I can resurrect those plants with a little bit of water. Anyway, there are things that, I don't know. Travel brings out the extravagance in me. Sometimes I'm extravagant in my spending. Sometimes I'm extravagant in my eating. You know, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting what I am like, sort of unchained from my normal routines. What's my personality really like without the normal constraints that I put on myself as it relates to diet and exercise and sleep and other things. Oh, and spending money. Yeah. It's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting how your personality is sort of expressed when you're away from home. When I'm at home, and which is most of the time, I'm able to sort of put a cap on all of these urges. I'm sort of practiced, right? Controlling my behavior. But when I'm out and about, being conditioned by an external environment that's unusual, um, my body and my mind and my behavior, respond differently than they normally do. It's interesting to see how it responds. So anyway, today, the question of the day is, let's see if I can pull it up here. Well, I don't see it right here, but I think I remember it. The question is, what experience did I have when I was a young boy that my parents never found out about? Okay, so when I was maybe 10 years old, I spent a lot of time just walking around. See, I had the privilege as a young boy to grow up in an agricultural town that was relatively small. It was Taos, New Mexico. And so what would generally happen throughout my day, particularly during the summer months, is I would get up in the morning, wash up, go eat breakfast. And then the first thing I'd do is just walk out of the house and I'd go play outdoors. And I wouldn't come back until lunchtime, when I would eat my lunch, maybe take a break, drink some water, and then I'd immediately walk out the door and play outside. And I'd play outside until dinner time. And then I'd walk in, have dinner, and then just veg for the rest of the day, rest of the night before I went to bed. So I spent a lot of time outdoors, 5, 6, 7 hours outdoors at a time was, pretty routine during the summer months. And I remember being out in the sun all the time, I would get really tan, especially around my arms and my face. And I'd get this like farmer tan when I take off my shirt. You would see that. And I mean, it was great. It was great to live a childhood like that. So really, this is about, when it comes to I spent a lot of time away from home, just sort of exploring the area, right? I'd walk around the agricultural fields. There were surrounding properties that had like apple orchards that I would go to, and I would, eat the apples off the trees, and some were down trees, and I'd play pirate ship on these down trees that were nearby, and then I would just walk far afield, right? There would be all kinds of, there's the mesas and the sagebrush and the cactus. Well, anyway, here's the story. When I was a boy, I was just walking. Just walking, exploring, right? As young kids are wont to do. And I came across this old abandoned construction site. I think they were building some kind of structure made out of cinder block. And I walked past it. I walked on site. It was abandoned. There didn't seem to be anything going on there, and there hadn't been anything going on there for a long time. But what there was this um, half-built cinder block wall and some scaffolding. Scaffolding is this. It's basically bars and pipes and planks of wood that create this structure, like a cage structure that goes straight up. And I seem to recall that this scaffolding went pretty high. It went like easily 50, 60 feet high. Maybe 40 to 50 feet high. And I don't really know how to explain it, but I had this urge in myself to climb the scaffold. And I did. I climbed that scaffold to the very top. And let me tell you, in retrospect, I'm looking back at that experience, and that was a very poor choice. As a kid, I'm really not sure what motivated me to do that. It was an unsafe thing to do. Being such a young boy and climbing aboard this scaffolding, who knew if it was stable or not? I did, however, make it to the top. I did hang out at the top for a couple minutes and then climb back down. But it was a very high risk game that I was playing. Anyway, it was exhilarating when I was there. I didn't really have a sense of, I was concerned somewhat, but I did make it to the top. I was successful going up, coming down. I didn't have any problems. I mean, I was certainly physically strong enough to climb up there and hang out, and I enjoyed the time I had up there. And while I was doing it, I had a fun time. But in retrospect, as an old guy, nearly 50 years old, I recognize that was not a very good choice. And nobody's ever found out about it. And I pretty much have never told anyone that story. And I certainly haven't told my parents. So anyway, that's something that I did that my parents never found out about. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing necessarily, but it's not a smart thing for me to do. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Because things could have gone real bad real fast. For example, I was kind of alone. It was just me around there, and if I would have fallen from a height, I wouldn't have been able to get rescued. In fact, it could have easily been a fatal accident because of the heights involved. I mean, it was like 40, 50 feet straight up. Yeah, no telling what could have happened. And then the structure could have been unstable. I mean, very easily. It could have gone off balance and fallen, or maybe one of the wood planks could have gotten misadjusted or fallen through onto the ground. I mean, really, truly, there were so many things that could have gone wrong. I'm so glad that none of those things went wrong. I remember being up there and being pretty concerned about whether it was safe to be up there, even as a boy. But I guess I thought it was safe enough. Anyway, I did come back from that experience with a real memory that I created. So I guess that's good. So, yeah. I'm so glad that I go to New Mexico when the weather is good. I go during the summertime. I don't go during the wintertime. I don't go during November or Thanksgiving or December or Christmas or January because, it's at high altitude, the base of, it's sort of at the bottom of the Rocky Mountain chain. And during the winter, it can get pretty snowy at high altitude. Places like Taos and Santa Fe get snow pretty regularly. These cities are about 7,000 feet in elevation. I think Albuquerque is about 5,000 feet, about a mile in elevation. And it can get pretty cold at night sometimes. And on my trips, the weather was great. It was perfect, 72 degrees outside, pretty much every day. Yeah. And the evenings were nice and warm and balmy. I mean, I was in at LAX just last night, outdoors at about 8 o'clock p.m. No jacket required. It was just not cold. And I was able to walk around and without a jacket. It's nice to just wear light jackets, not have to wear gloves and hats and earmuffs and things like that. Big bulky jackets. Not have to worry about your shoes. So we only had we only had like a little bit of bad weather. I was walking around Taos, New Mexico, and it began to rain. And it rained for like 15 minutes very lightly with some uh, high winds. But it really wasn't a problem. We just rushed to our car. We went to the pizza joint, Paisanos, had pizza. And then when we left the restaurant, the weather was just fine. Yeah. It was just a passing storm, like a microburst or something passing through the town at the time. And that's fine to be expected, definitely in the afternoons in northern New Mexico. And so glad I didn't have any weather related problems. It was interesting to see that there was snow on the ground in a lot of places. I guess there had been some snowstorms that had occurred in the local area. I mean, when I was hanging out at my dad's place, he's got a magnificent view of the mountains nearby, and I saw that there was snow on those mountainsides. And there was not just a little bit of snow, there was a lot of snow on those mountains. And for those mountains to have snow in late May, that's pretty amazing. I think there were stories that people were telling about how there had been a pretty big snowstorm lately, which is pretty amazing to have a snowstorm like that mid-May. It's definitely a sort of a wetter, colder winter this year compared to other winters. This is the 2019 winter. The winter of 2018, 2019. So it was really nice to visit with my brothers. I had some real quality time with each one of my brothers. Had some quality time with my mom, quality time with my dad. It's important to keep those connections strong. And we were able to reaffirm, as brothers and sister, reaffirm a lot of the, just the goodwill and enjoyment that goes with being in close proximity with each other and hanging out. It was good. It was good to be around the family again. It was good to spend some time with my sister. I'd actually never been to my sister's home before, even though she lived in the same home for like 10 years. And that was really nice to find out where she lived and just to hang out with her at her home and have dinner and play games and stuff. It was nice. Nice to visit with her significant other and their children. And it was just a good time. For me, family is important. Family is important. And I really have this love of family. It definitely is a value of mine. It's something that I think my dad mostly sort of indoctrinated in me. Certainly, as I was growing up, the religion that I had at the time emphasized the love of family, and I think I've sort of accepted that, and it's a big part of my experience, my life experience. It's sort of an unspoken value. I don't really talk about love of family as a value on a regular basis, and I never really have spoken directly and succinctly about it in so many words. But it really is an important part of my worldview, an important part of my value system. One part of my value system that I seek to uphold. And really, also, Emily, it's a part of my value system that I would like to hand down to you. And I recognize I haven't really done a very good job addressing a love of family and how important it is. But I have a feeling that indirectly, you probably know how important family is to me. And through my connection with you, I think probably have a pretty good idea about how I think it's important, how, you know, children and fathers and mothers really need to be together, that, they benefit from hanging out with one another. There's a lot of learning that can happen when families get together, and there's also a lot of support and a camaraderie and just joy that's possible. And it's true, there's also a lot of what I'd call friction that can be possible among family members. But you know what? Those really are opportunities to be stronger and better. And they're really opportunities to create value within families and work out the kinks, work out subtle problems and issues, or not so subtle problems and issues. Yeah, I think family is a really wonderful, valuable source. They're a group of people who are committed to being around you and committed to loving you and supporting your well-being. It's really important to have those people around. People who are willing to speak up and say, hey, something's not right, and sort of do some truth telling in your presence. It's nice when it comes from family. And it's fine when it comes with friends too, or even it's fine when it comes from strangers. But I think it more reliably comes from family, that kind of feedback. And you can do, there's a lot of learning that you can do. Like, one thing, I was walking around with, I guess I guess I'm his uncle. I was walking around with my sister's son, and he's, it's kind of funny. We were walking around. He's got all these toys he plays with, and I'm really a lot like him. I love having toys around and playing with toys. And he happened to have this fabric frisbee, which he was throwing around. And of course, I got into the fun and threw frisbees. In fact, that's one thing that I did on this trip a lot, is I threw frisbees. I had a good time throwing frisbees around. Anyway, he was throwing around this cloth frisbee, and I got this idea that I would like to see a knit hat that you could use as a frisbee. I mean, I'm actually really seriously interested in wearing a frisbee on my head. I'm super serious. Like, I'm thinking I'm going to be taking a quilting class coming up soon, a sewing machine class. And I'm thinking one kind of quilt I could make is a quilt that goes from looking like a hat to looking like a frisbee. This is like a major brainstorm of mine. And I was thinking, even like, I could create it as a small business owner. I could make a frisbee hat. I totally think I can do that. I don't really know how to do it, but I think it's entirely possible. I think I want to make it happen. I want the frisbee hat to be real. I want to wear a frisbee hat every day of the week. Every day of the week. I've got this idea about, wouldn't it be nice to, have your clothes turn into toys? Like, I don't know, maybe you could have like like a belt that turns into a hacky sack or something like that. And you could play hacky sack. Or a hat that turns into a frisbee. Or maybe, I don't know, gloves that turn into a ball that you can play around with. Or, I don't know, there's probably some other kind of toys that you could incorporate into your clothing that you wear all day. Like a tie that turns into a, I don't know. What would a tie conceivably turn into? I don't know, like a lasso. Bolo ties can turn into a lasso, I imagine, or belts can turn into a lasso. Anyway, I like that idea of things having multiple purposes. And the idea that things that you wear turn into toys, I think that's amazing too. One thing I'm also quite interested in is like Bluetooth speakers. I'm interested in wearing a Bluetooth speaker. I think that would be neat. The other day I was in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, maybe about a week ago, and I saw these runners running around, and one of the runners, the lead runner, had a backpack on. And this backpack had what I imagine was a Bluetooth speaker in it. And as this dude was running down the street, he was playing like electronic dance music. And it was so fun to watch him do that and his friends do that. I really got a sense of the potential of having speakers, music speakers worn as clothing. I think it's a great idea. Yeah. Oh man. My throat. It's kind of interesting. I wonder, one thing that I did when I was traveling this last week was I tried to make sure that I got enough water in me, right? The thing about the desert in the American Southwest is that it's pretty dry. That means that the humidity is pretty low. And I got the sense that I was just respirating all kinds of vapors, water vapor, from my skin and from my lips and from my mouth as I exhaled. And I think I lost a lot of water up there in those that high altitude and in those warm temperatures. And I was doing the best job I could to replace the fluids and make sure that I was well hydrated. And I succeeded, thankfully, in doing that. I didn't have any problems with hydration when I was out there. And, it just reminded me how good I have it here at sea level, where the air is relatively humid and at least compared to the high desert. And I don't know. I think it's important to be hydrated for a human body to be hydrated. I think it is possible to be somewhat overhydrated. I guess especially if you eat a lot of salt, right? You get a little puffy. But I was glad that I didn't have any trouble with hydration. So, Emily, I think I'm going to sort of finish up this video blog. I want to say that, Emily, that you were missed, that I thought about you every day, that I thought about you, I'm sure, every couple hours, maybe even every hour during the day. I was inwardly, I was kind of wishing that you were there so that you could visit with your relatives, your grandma, your grandpa, your aunts and uncles and cousins. I know you don't see them very often. I know you haven't seen them for like 8 to 10 years. And I regret that. And I want you to get to know your family. Here I am with a distinct, clear love of family value that I want to transmit, and that I feel somewhat powerless to transmit it because of our separation. And so I'll be talking about it in the letters. um, and you know, helping you to appreciate how important family is. And yeah, I want you to know that you were missed, that I missed you, and that your relatives missed you. When I spoke to them about you, they were, you know, speaking to me in tones of recognition, knowing who you were, and you know, I could feel that even they had a desire to meet you and be with you and spend some time with you and get to know you better. You for at least my parents, who are your grandparents love grandchildren, you know, and they care about you and they want to know more about you. They want to know what your life is like and what's going on with you. Fact is, I didn't have a lot to tell them. I mean, I knew that you were in track and field, but I didn't know what sport you played in track and field. I didn't know anything about your competitions or what you thought about track and field, whether you liked it or didn't like it. So I really couldn't say much about um, your experience. So I regret not being able to transmit a lot of information to my family about you. And I sort of registered their own sense of loss that they haven't seen you for a long time. But they do remember you and they do honor you in their own special way. And anyway, I want you to know that you were missed. And I I want for me it's a dream that perhaps I can take you out to New Mexico so that you can visit with your family there. Um, I'd be happy to take you out anytime, even this summer, and we could get a flight out there and visit. But I actually have a feeling that that probably won't happen until you reach your late teens or early 20s. I don't know. For me, I guess that's sort of realistic thinking. But prove me wrong, Am. We can do it. We can make it happen, and you can just get to know your family just a little bit, just a little bit. I think it would be beneficial to you, and it would. I would feel a lot better about the way things were going if that happened too. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you later. All right. Bye bye. I love you, girl.